So, you know how they say your frontal lobe is fully developed by the age of 25, by the time you turn 25. So, I turned 25 2 months ago. Yeah, a little over 2 months ago. And I can feel that. I I can feel something changed in how I think and what I think about. Because before, I would just feel things. I would just experience things. But now I'm still as open to experience, but I also think a lot about what I experience and how I feel about it and why I feel that way. So, yeah, I haven't recorded a single podcast episode for 2 months. I mean, you never know when the muse will visit you. And another thing that comes by surprise, you never know what your muse will bring you, like what material will it bring you to work with and to explore. Yeah, so my muse visited me last night as I couldn't sleep. And if you follow me on Instagram, you know I am obsessed with Rosalia's new album, Lux. And I just keep posting stories about it, like certain lyrics, certain, I don't know, insights I got from each piece. Not each, but like some pieces. And obviously it's like top of mind for me, and I'm processing that constantly as I'm listening to it constantly. And so one thing that it made me think about, like a very general topic actually, but well, general topic implies there's a lot of things to explore, you know? So one general topic, it inspired me to discover and to think about is basically religion and our relationship with it, because for me that's a recurring topic since I've turned 20. Not even just religion, faith, let's say, faith and spirituality. And yeah, it's been a very big part of my self discovery journey since I've turned 2021. So yeah, it's been 5 years, and I thought about how my relationship with faith and spirituality changed over time and how it developed and what I see around me and how this like themes of faith and religion are resurfacing in a bigger volume in pop culture as well. I mean, I thought, why not talk about it? Even though they say, religion is such a risky topic, da da da. I mean, whatever. I'm not here to preach, I'm not here to teach, I'm just here to share my experience and possibly offer some space for you to think about your own relationship with faith and hopefully make something clearer for me and for you. So there was news that this new record by Rosalia, Lux, surpassed like Taylor Swift's new album, and like it just hit top one on Spotify, I guess, or like on a global chart, whatever. Not sure about that, but like it's super popular like immediately, and it's been just 1 week since it was released. And so it really got me thinking, like, what's the ingredient? Like, why is it so successful? Because, for example, when my boyfriend listened to it for the first time, and I mean, he has an objectively good taste in music, but he commented something like, I mean, it's great music, but it's not going to be commercially successful. I mean, look at we are with my girl Rosalia. And but yeah, I mean, I understand where it's coming from, because this is entirely different, not only from what Rosalia's fan base would expect, since she more like since she gained most of her popularity probably from Motomami and like some earlier records in reggaeton. Um, but also because it's like so different from what pop culture is now. Yes, we're now more leaning into something more experimental and like fusion in sounds, fusion in genre, but still like this is so distinct from everything we've heard lately. And partially maybe that's the part of the success, maybe that's the ingredient, or at least one of the ingredients in the recipe. Because like, we are, I think collectively, maybe it's just me, but I think it's pretty common. Like we are hungry for new sound. And she gave it. So yeah, obviously. Then like immaculate craftsmanship, if I can call it, and I think music is a craft. And like production, and I mean London Royal Orchestra, whatever they're called, is like playing for her and with her, and she like just goes into opera out of nowhere. And yeah, obviously it's new and exciting and it just hooks. But I think another and far more important ingredient here is the theme, which is religion and faith, that makes this album so relevant and also sacred. Because here's the thing, like Rosalia not just gets like hops on this wave of the rising interest in spirituality, faith, religion, da 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 da, but also she makes it so personal that it's just impossible to, you know, to skip. And so I couldn't help but wonder, having my little Carrie Bradshaw moment here, I couldn't help but wonder, why is religion such a intriguing topic, and why can't we just like ignore it, Because I have rarely met a person who would be 100% genuinely and sincerely indifferent to religion or any other form of spirituality and faith. And like, I don't want to gaslight anyone or like categorize, but for the sake of this episode, I will do that. I will categorize, not gaslight, hopefully. And I will pretend that there are just three types of people depending on their relationship with religion. And so there are those who are completely against that. You cannot say they're indifferent because like they have a strong opinion on that, right? Um there are those who are like who have integrated religion and faith and spirituality quite solidly into their lives beyond Christmas dinners with, extended family and I don't know, decorating eggs for Easter. And then there are those who I would call pendulums that just swing from one side of the spectrum to another. And it's just like a never ending cycle. They keep circling like um, between these two extremes. These might be people with religious trauma. Or for example, someone who's never officially gotten into any religion or confession, but they've always been like curious, and they saw and felt some things that like cannot be explained with anything else but um religious or spiritual concept. Or there's someone like me, coming from a rather religious family. For example, my grandmother was quite religious, and well, I think she passed that on to my mother as well. When I was little, my mom would take me to church for like big religious celebrations, events. I hated going to church. I hated the smell. interestingly enough, this is one of my favorite smells now. But back then, like I would just not get the idea of people coming together to such a small stuffed place and just do some kind of ritual I didn't understand the meaning of. And like, why do we have to do it instead of being at home and watching cartoons or like reading books or whatever? And thank God, my mom never really pushed me. Like, she tried a couple of times. Well, once she figured out it was not just me being like showing attitude or whatever. It's just like I genuinely disliked the experience. She just wouldn't take me there. But as I grew up and as I got more as I learned more about philosophy than spirituality, I ended up going for Christmas services to a Catholic cathedral, even though, for example, I'm Orthodox. And I figured like I feel closer to Catholicism than I feel to Orthodoxism, if that's a word. So for me, it was like a very conscious and very intentional journey from really not wanting to have to have any religious experience to yeah to like I don't know if that's called serving a mass. I don't know if I served, but I definitely ate. But anyways, um yeah, that was like really conscious and really like it was my decision. And so I think a lot of so-called pendulums would recognize themselves more or less in this experience that I had with like faith and religion and spirituality. And so the reason why I dedicated this much time of this episode to describing these pendulums and like my own experience as a pendulum um, is that I think I'm gonna come back to Rosalia for a sec. I think that those pendulums make the core, but maybe secret, but core target audience of Lux. And since we are the majority, I think this is why this album resonated so well with with bigger audience, with general public. And this is why it is this successful just like immediately. However, the topic of this episode is not Rosalia's new album. But as I promised, faith, our relationship with it, and actually many subtopics surrounding it. So let me get back to that. So, as someone who identifies themselves as a pendulum, I'm just like really curious and like it's like, it's almost like anthropological, I don't know, sociological interest that I have. Why are we so careful as pendulums with religion, with faith? And why are we basically just non-committal with it? So I started thinking, and what really came to mind at 4 a.m. was first of all that the concept of religion and its attributes and its like elements are so deeply integrated, like rooted at the same time in our cultural code as human beings, because no matter where you come from, like what your origin is, in one way or another, you are raised on certain archetypes, on certain concepts that come from religion. And yeah, they're just like such a big part of your life, and like everyday life even, and such a big part of your identity, that it's impossible to ignore. You might not acknowledge it, but it's there. Or you might acknowledge it and just understand that it's there. But even though it's so naturally integrated into who we are, at the same time, it's just like the concept is just too heavy. Not just rules or commitments that come from following a religion or like just practicing any form of belief. I mean, what's so difficult about don't kill, don't steal, whatever? I do struggle with gluttony though, but it's just the emotional weight of believing into something so deeply that you just like follow it as it is, even though you've never seen, and I'm gonna sound like that type of atheist, um, but like something you've never seen or like experienced, like in its pure form. Like, I've never seen Jesus, right? Like, I've never seen God, I've never seen an angel. Maybe just this morning when I looked in the mirror. um, this is getting a bit inappropriate for this type of episode, but I hope you can bear with me. So yeah, it's difficult to fully commit to something you haven't experienced, like, as I said, in its purest form. Unless, of course, it's a faint promise of possibly eternal life and just a happy family with 5 kids and 2 dogs and maybe 1 cat, with a guy with a mullet and mustache, and figuring out my relationship type, tag on Hinge, or whatever the hell your last situationship was. But like, why do we eventually give up on and betray John's and Greg's and, well, in the end of the day, Santa, even though he is a religious figure, still, but keep coming back to institutionalized faith? Or let me frame it like this: why do we keep flirting with religion the way we keep flirting with our exes? Wow, so scandalous. I'm so proud of this line, guys. Um, so I will try to answer this question. And my version would be that there is just like this painful similarity between emotional heaviness of religion and emotional heaviness of love. Now I'm gonna bring back some Rosalia sprinkles here. So she has this song on this record, Lux. It's called basically God is a Stalker. And like this line perfectly aligns with my perception of it. Like, if you think of it, because like the concept of someone always watching, like watching you from anywhere, this is exactly why so many people, pendulums mostly, hover on the edge of faith. This idea, this is exactly the idea of being fully seen, which is absolutely terrifying, and at the same time completely blissful and intoxicating, just like love. So now that we are more or less clear on why we keep swinging back and forth, another thing that I really want to understand is what experiences swing us more to the left, to disbelief, and what experiences swing us more to the right. And I think the distinction and the answer is quite simple actually. Like, you know the saying, there are no atheists on a crashing, like falling plane. Well, that pretty much explains it. I mean, I don't even know if I should be saying it out loud, but I'll still say it. Like, faith is kind of a resort, like asylum for a tired and wounded soul. And that's what it's always been and always will be. By the way, can we just stop for a second? Just talk about how I framed sort of atheism as something on the left side of the spectrum, and believing and turning back to religion and to God and to faith is something right on the right side of the spectrum. I mean, divine providence, what can I say? So, yeah, coming back to wounded hearts and souls, Rosalia's album, she's gonna just be with us here today. The theme of the album is like surviving a heartbreak and healing and being reborn and reinventing yourself, which is not something new. But looking at it through a religious perspective, that is something new, at least to the modern pop culture. And so, again, it got me thinking, why deep emotional healing and this like rebirth and reinvention, self reinvention, is tied so closely with spirituality, not just religion, that it's almost impossible to think of what other tools and notions and vessels I and we as people, and especially as women, I think, could use. Now, I really don't want to dismiss anyone who's relied heavily on therapy or any other practices and any other, yeah, let's call it practices, like more scientific methods. Um, so I will reframe it a bit. Why, for a lot of people, healing, deep healing, and especially from a romantic heartbreak, often ends up in borrowing religious language, symbols, archetypes, even if they don't really call it religion. And so this is where I will stop for a while and just share my own experience and like how this arc developed for me. And so I already mentioned how it started when I was like 20. And obviously it started with a heartbreak. It was my first big heartbreak where like I just had to really collect small pieces of my poor innocent soul and yeah, just basically reinvent myself and just find a way to do it. And like for many girls, and not only girls probably in my generation, like it started with like meditations and like metaphoric cards, tarot, um, like manifestations, etc., etc. That heartbreak was a really big one. So it took me 3 years of all these practices and also some other life experiences that were for me like closely tied with spiritual experiences as well. And when you think the race is the race is over, like you've survived the race, there's just like one more curve that you really need to take, and that curve doesn't really shatter you as bad, but I mean, it does wound you. And so for me, that curve, second heartbreak, smaller one, but still one, um, that was the final leverage for me to turn into like a more institutionalized faith, where I think I mentioned that already. I ended up going to church quite often just to sit there, and think and sometimes cry and sometimes just pray. I still, to this day, I don't know how to pray correctly, and I think that's okay. But we will turn back to prayers a bit later. And with every step of this journey, every curve of this arc, with every spiritual framework I leaned onto, there would be a symbol, an archetype, a metaphor that would just be foundational to this process of self reinvention and healing. And this is actually a very common thing for, if not all, then for many religions. There are always archetypes and metaphors surrounding the topic of healing and rebirth, and that are also deeply rooted in spiritual practices. For example, if we take earlier religions, in ancient Egypt there was this phoenix bird that burns itself down and just rebirths. Or speaking of more modern religions, in Christianity we have this baptism ablution where you step into water, and when you step out, you're like a whole new person. You're like a Christian, and you basically erase all your, not all your past experience, but like unpleasant, or, well, yeah, let's call it unpleasant past experience. Sort of a symbol of renewal as well. In Islam, there is foot washing before stepping into a mosque. In Judaism, it's mikveh. In Buddhism, I don't know, water offering. Funnily enough, it's always about water. Why? Well, I guess you know that when we're like embryos in our mother's stomachs, we are surrounded by water. And so we basically just breaking our poor mother's waters all over again. So yeah, having all these religious practices and archetypes circling around the theme of rebirth and healing, that's one reason for why, at least to me, as a pendulum again, it seems very difficult to imagine a healing process without religion or spirituality or faith. Another reason, and this is where we're coming to the topic of prayers, deep healing in a true form of it is a very private experience. It's not something you can share. You can use your friends' help, obviously, your close circles help to cope, but healing is something that happens inside, and you are the only one who can make it happen. Because after all, it's your mind getting rewired, or speaking more poetically, it's your heart stitching up its cracks and wounds. Real healing is where we turn deeply into ourselves, and it's pretty much ongoing, silent or not so silent internal dialogue. And this internal dialogue is what prayer pretty much mimics and, well, just is. And closing this section, I'm gonna bring it back to Rosalia again. One of my favorite songs on this album is Sauvignon Blanc. Not just because I'm a heavy wine drinker, but also I think because the topic of healing is so close to me, and that song is basically it. She sings, I don't have a fear of past. It's sunk in the bottom of my glass of Sauvignon Blanc, which is basically baptism disguised as nightlife. Maybe not nightlife, because as I imagine it, this song is more about being in a cozy living room with someone you love, and just enjoying wine together with them in a more private environment, but still. And the main idea here, which is also exactly how I love to speak about healing, is that past doesn't disappear. It just settles. And that's religious language in a secular world. So, as I wrap it up, to not make this episode just yap about gods and exes, if you want to take something from this episode, let it be this small ritual, obviously tied to Lux by Rosalia. I mean, I think at this point she should just pay me, really. Or at least just, I don't know, send me a signed copy of her CD. So there is a song on the record, it's track 2, and it's called Reliquia, which is relic. And I want you to listen to this song, and not as a love letter to the world with this upbeat melody, but as a reflection, as a mirror. And to this mirror, I want you to ask, what am I treating as a sacred object which never deserved to be holy in the first place? Because here's something you'll probably never want to admit, but I will say it anyways. After heartbreak, the cause, aka the person who hurt us, become this holy object. But the thing is, we rarely miss the person. We just worship the wound. So yeah, turn on the song, answer the question, but like be completely honest. I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but really answer the question and watch how it rises you, the experience. And that moment is exactly where many religions say God lives. Or if you want a different word, clarity. And maybe this is also exactly why Lux feels so sacred. Because this record reminds us what we still treat as holy. So this is all I have for you today. And I hope I didn't sound too preachy. I hope I didn't push anyone into believing or not believing, or just reconsidering their relationship with God and religion and faith. What I hope I did is like offered you, as I said in the very beginning, offered you some space to reflect on how this experience is for you, and maybe offered you some comfort, or at least some song recommendation. um yeah, if you listened to this point, I really appreciate it, and feel free to let me know what you think. I would love to explore the topic more deeply if you'd like to add anything. And yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next episode, no matter when it will be released. So yeah, stay blessed. Bye.